Okay, we are live again with Jatinder Gill, and I'm paranoid because this is take two. Because just so everyone's listening, Jatinder, before we start, we recorded a podcast that I thoroughly enjoyed. I always enjoy chatting with you. I just enjoy your perspectives on so much stuff, and the audio was just brutal. What happened was the internal MacBook mic flipped on. And it was this mic for this laptop that was taking all our audio. It was brutal. It was just unusable. So you're back. So welcome back, Jatinder Gill.
Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm going to push this mic right to, now I want to make sure I'm, there we go. Yeah. So I want to start, and we can take this wherever you want to go, but I want to start.
Wherever you want to go, all good.
Yeah, okay. I want to begin with just some context for anyone who's listening who did not hear the first time that you were here with Mike DeZormo on this podcast. Can you just give everyone a little bit, maybe just of your background, however you want to share it, and what you're up to with real estate, just to build some context of who you are in that regard? I know there's more to you than your career and real estate, but maybe that'll help kind of frame the discussion a little bit.
Sure. So I had a couple of investment properties for the last 10 years, and those were condos, as well as my principal residence. And then I would say I really dove deep into real estate once COVID started because it was a great opportunity just to reflect. And in the last 2 years, I've been on a heavy acquisition spree, focusing on converting single-family homes to duplexes in the Hamilton and St. Catharines area.
And so why did you go for single family homes to duplexes? That was purely to increase I'm assuming the cash flow on those properties.
Yeah, primarily cash flow. Actually, sorry, not primarily cash flow. Primarily to increase the after repair value and just build that instant equity. So just comparing the comps at acquisition, comparing comps post acquisition to what the ARV would be, just the quickest path to wealth, given the ability to refinance, would be to force the appreciation via renovations.
So you were, and have you been able to see that? Have you been able to do some of these renovations, add a legal second suite in some properties, and then get the appraised value that you were hoping to get?
Yes, even right now in today's market, with the exception of one of the properties, refinanced 7 so far, and every single one has been a perfect BRRRR. So the full renovation cost, call that $100,000 to $150,000 back, and then plus the initial down payment back. So that's about $300,000 cash back for every single opportunity. And then it's an income producing asset for life. So it's a beautiful thing.
So even Nick and I, when we pulled out the down payments, it always just felt like, is this really like illegal? You get to buy this asset shortly after, or you don't know what's going to happen in the real estate market, to be fair. But at some point, if you're able to refinance and pull out your down payment, never mind you pulling out the renovation costs, you always just feel like, is this legit? Like I still keep this thing? Right. And I got all the money I put in out?
In 6 months too.
Okay, so what are some of the numbers we're looking at? And I know with the way the market is, just for everyone's awareness, we are recording this right at the end of June. This might go out a little bit later. So sometime in July, this will go out. But that's when we're recording it, because who knows, by mid-July, maybe prices have tripled from here. Maybe we've reached bottom and prices triple, or they go down like 50% from who knows where we're headed.
Right.
But can you paint the picture here a little bit with some more detail? What approximately did you buy these properties for? And then what are you renting them out for? Give us some just general numbers.
Sure, yeah. So the purchase prices are roughly between $600,000 to $700,000 and $750,000. The ARVs are pushing $1 million. The rents are $4,500 on average. I do have several properties that are over $5,000 as well. And so the 2 units.
So to get over 5,000 on those ones, so you're renting the top floor, then over $2,500, like 2,900.
Over 3,000.
Over 3,000 for a main floor, 3-bedroom, I assume.
3 or 4 bedroom.
3 or 4 bedroom, over 3,000, and the basement in one of those, then you're renting out for 2,000. What? 2,000?
Yeah, low 2s. I have one unit that's producing $2,350.
Okay, so that's a great amount of gross revenue on the property. Then you have your expenses and stuff like that. But then when you're taking in that much, you're able to cash flow, even after doing the BRRRR, pulling out your down payment and the renovation costs.
For sure, yeah. Every single property is still $700 or several $100 cash flow positive.
Yeah, got it. Okay. And then you mentioned that even in this market, you got an appraisal that you were happy with, because generally what we've noticed over the last 20 years is whenever there's a little bit of concern in the real estate market, the appraisers kind of get the tap on the shoulder from the bank saying, hey, you better tighten up your appraisals right now, because if we lose money on any of these things, you're not going to get any more business from us. And the appraisers tend to go really conservative. But you're still able to pull out some appraisals that you need on the refinances?
It's working out, thankfully. I think we also have to lead the witness as well. So sharing the renovation costs directly with the appraiser, sharing your personal opinion on what you think the value should be, supported by comps, and doing so in such a way that's with respect, so you're not undermining someone. And then also sharing the building permits, the final occupancy permit, and just show the breadth and depth of work that went into the property. So it's almost like a selling process, but doing it in such a way just to add value to someone else's life, to make their life easier as well.
And then how are you doing that? You're accidentally meeting them at the property when they're going to be there? Or are you, are you telling them, hey, I'm waiting here for you to talk to you? Or
I need to meet you at this time, this
yeah,
day.
Yeah.
A little bit of both. So whether that's just communicating on the phone or via email, or actually being there at the property with them. And then when I'm at the property with them, I'm not doing, let's say, a show and tell. That's the quickest way to piss off an appraiser. I'm just there to let them do their thing and just kindly educate them on what was done. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then from that, now I'm curious, was there anything that you found that really stood out when you did just gently share some information on how you've improved the property? Was there any one thing, or no, you just presented everything and they just took it all in?
I basically just shared the full scope of work from the renovations, explained what the true value adds were, told them the total renovation budget, showed them the actual invoices as well too, and just explained the overall quality of the project and how there really isn't something comparable around it. So therefore it's difficult to find an exact comparable. So therefore don't really go low on this property.
Yeah. Hint, hint. Look how much money I poured into this sucker.
Right.
And then what have you noticed, if anything, about renting out the properties? Has demand been strong, weaker than you thought, different than you thought?
I guess very strong, I would argue. So 50, 60, 70 applicants. Have a couple properties listed right now. I think the demand's actually even stronger, just given the interest rates are higher and probably more people are renting and more people are hesitating because of the economy. So very strong. So it's never an issue to fill these properties.
Yeah, you're touching on something I just want to bring to everyone's attention. I find that most beginner investors, when a real estate market changes and prices change a little bit, they in the starter home category, they don't believe the tenant demand still exists. Every time we've ever seen a change in real estate sentiment, we've always seen strong tenant demand in the starter home category, because people still need a place to live, especially in Ontario with our population numbers the way that they are and our supply of housing so short. So
agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're confirming that basically.
For sure. Yeah. And then I think, but what's happening with the economy, I think a lot of sellers don't want to sell their homes because, number one, there's nowhere to go. And then number two is, if they actually do get into a new mortgage product, some people are locked in at like 1.5%, 2% right now. So there's no incentive for them to look elsewhere either. So therefore, that rental pool is always going to be strong, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100% agree. It's going to be interesting to see, we have the population forecasted. There's different bodies in Canada that will do forecasts. CMHC will share some numbers. Ontario will share some numbers. The federal government will kind of share some general immigration numbers. Mm-hmm. But any of those numbers don't match the housing supply that we're putting out. So we're putting out in Ontario about 70,000 housing units on average a year right now. Some years are higher. I'm giving an average number, because I'm saying that because last year was actually 90, but 70,000 roughly on average over the last 5 years. But the family formations are in the 100,000 or at the 100,000 level. So we're short between 10 and sometimes 30,000 housing units a year. So at the end of this decade, we're going to be short between 100,000 and 300,000 homes if we don't increase our output of new supply. And
right.
Our kind of history with tracking these numbers always shows that the population projections are always low. So we err to the side of conservative on our population projectives. We tend to always overshoot them in this country, at least in the last 10 years, right. 15 years or so. So at the end of this decade, Nick and I were just having this debate. Are we going to say like, holy smokes, Jatinder, like you're one of the guys, you own a single family home property in Hamilton? Like you have a unicorn. Like, are we really headed there? And we were using the city of Brantford as the example. Like, well, people walk around because right now you would think of that in Yorkville or like, oh my gosh, you own like a penthouse in Yorkville in downtown Toronto. But are we going to have the same kind of, thought for someone owning a single family home in Hamilton or Brantford or St. Catharines, where traditionally we haven't really thought that way? And he was kind of hesitant to think that we would. But I'm thinking we might be headed there where someone's like, you have a single family home in Brantford, Ontario. How did you ever accomplish that? Like, does your family come from massive wealth or something? You know what I mean?
Yeah. The whole like population, the immigration, lack of new developments. I think that's the fundamental fact that we always have to keep top of mind with our investor hats on. So if we just keep the focus on that and don't get impacted by interest rates, inflation, what's happening overseas or in the US, just keeping that in mind, that's all you really need to move forward. Like, keep that at the basis of every single judgment that you have, because that's fact. Everything else is speculation.
How have you been able to come to that conclusion? Because so many people are swayed by the direction of the price point on real estate, especially residential investors. Commercial investors, I find, are very much more income driven. What's the income and the expenses on the property? Whereas I find residential investors, although that's what we try to talk about, income and expenses, they seem to be swayed on the direction of the current price point. Where does that come from with you?
I think that's just financial education. So when you mention commercial versus residential, typically a commercial investor is more sophisticated. And if you just think of debt coverage service ratios, that's all you have to keep in mind. What is the NOI of the property? So if we just take that same investing principle, apply it to residential real estate, and then apply that macroeconomic factor that you just mentioned around housing, inventory, immigration, that's all you really need. But I don't think we do the due diligence enough to understand those numbers to that level of detail. And it's actually not that hard to get to that point.
It's not. And recently we're actually getting better information on population and housing supply. 10 years ago when we started looking at this kind of stuff, Nick and I were just like, we think there's a out of whack balance here, but we can't really, it looks like there's
You probably feel like you're repeating yourself like every single month. It's the same pattern,
Yeah,
right?
It's the same pattern. We're like, I think there's a shortage, but we really can't find enough good data. And then Ontario started putting out some decent data on the government website in Ontario, and they put out some projections. We're like, oh my gosh. Even the Toronto Housing Authority started putting some GTA data out, and it kind of confirmed what we had believed. And this is starting maybe between 4 and 5 years ago.
Okay.
Before then, it was honestly just like, wait a second, it just really looks like there's a lot more demand than supply. Like, we really couldn't piece it all together. So it is getting a little bit easier. And then the third variable for us, of course, was interest rates, because we thought, okay, like if we can figure out population, and so, population is the demand, supply from the developers. If we could figure out that dynamic, then our only variable after that would be rates. And that led us down into this rabbit hole of macroeconomics that we never thought we'd go down, because at first it was really just, what's the Bank of Canada going to do next? Mm-hmm. And then we realized, oh my gosh, they seem to be influenced by the Federal Reserve. And then we thought, oh my gosh, what's this thing called the US dollar that's the reserve currency of the world? And like, oh my gosh, what's the Bretton Woods Act? Like, how did this come to be? And what happened in 1971? And
now they can just print.
Yeah, and now they just seem to print money, and it leads you down this rabbit hole. So our real estate investing really, I think we joked about this when we recorded the first time. We sometimes think we're like, we kind of get people at Rockstar to help them buy an income property. But then we're like, after they bought an income property, we're like, hey, check out the central banks. Look at this kind of scam they're running over here. You should probably pay attention to them. This is a joke. And I know some people don't like it when I say scam or, manipulated markets, but I always get a kick out of it, Jatinder. So
it's all related. It's true.
Yeah. It's all related in one way or another for sure.
Yeah.
What's your background? Why do you have such an analytical way to look at real estate? I forget, what did you take in school? Is this come from your schooling or something, or have you always thought like this?
I guess my formal education is in economics and finance, and then a master's degree in business and some executive leadership at Harvard. And
oh, really? I don't know if I knew all this.
Yeah. Then just continuous learning, which I think is more important than formal education.
Yeah. I agree. Okay. So then the continuous education for you seems to be ongoing, because I know you have listened to every single episode of the podcast. I don't know if that's still current, but at one point you would listen to, I feel like 3 years worth of our podcasts.
I did.
Then you stumbled into Mike DeZormo, and I feel like you interviewed him to see if he was going to be I was going to say worthy, but if he was a good fit. And he give you his book at that point or recommend his book, or did he have the book then? I can't remember.
I met him. Actually, I purchased it after.
Oh, did you?
After I
Okay.
met him. Yeah.
Okay.
He was just finalizing it.
Okay. Because I think if you read his book, you quickly realize he knows his stuff, just the stories and the investors that he's worked with and that he outlines in that book. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go down this rabbit hole, and then why, with your background, economics, finance, some leadership stuff that's just helped you out, that kind of stuff I feel like helps you out in every avenue of life. Why did you decide residential real estate? Why that choice? Where does that fit in your life?
Yeah. So when COVID started, I stopped traveling and I used to travel frequently for work. So time became very abundant. And then because time came abundant and also because it was COVID, thinking just what is going on with this world, I needed to do some more, let's say, diving deep internally. And this is where I talked about previously around conducting a life audit. So where do I stand from a financial standpoint, a health standpoint, spiritual standpoint, etc. And I gave myself a rating. So 1 to 10 of where I truly feel, honestly, where I stand, and then where do I want to be? And I guess fortunately, or unfortunately, there were a lot of gaps, right? So there's a lot of opportunity, and I just realized I need to do something about this. The world has basically just stopped, and now here's my chance to truly catapult myself moving forward as quickly as possible. And to deep dive to, let's say, into residential real estate, that would be under the economic bucket, and I wasn't where I wanted to be from, let's say, a wealth standpoint. And then it comes down to research, education, mentorship, and then implementation. So basically when March or April hit, I just dove deep on almost everything. A lot of it was Rockstar related. And then I just started to take massive action around it, made mistakes and can keep on learning. And yeah, that's it.
So that was a conscious decision. Like when you say I took massive action around that, like you're throwing that out very flippantly, like it's something everyone does. No one really that we see takes massive action very often, but that was a conscious thing. I'm going to take, you're using the words massive action.
Yes.
You decided you were.
100%. Yeah. So when I say I conduct that life audit, it's around creating a plan around that life audit in and of itself. So let's say, for example, you're like, I want to lose 15 pounds because I want to look better. Sure, that's great. I'm sure we all do. But at the end of the day, what is the plan over the next 90 days to get you to lose that weight? That's exactly what I did with real estate. So when I met up with Mike, I shared my real estate plan with him around number of homes, the neighborhoods I don't want to invest into, what I'm seeking to get out of real estate, and then also my expectations of him to determine if there actually was a match. So I was very prescriptive around it because clarity breeds mastery, which breeds results.
Why did you choose that you want to improve your financial situation with real estate? And I'm going to pick your brain in two regards, because you could have chose something else. It didn't have to be real estate. You could have gone into, I don't know, double down on anything else to invest in. So like, what was it about real estate? And then, what were you chasing there? Is there a certain goal financially? Like, is there a number that you're after, a lifestyle that you're after? Did you extrapolate forward? For me, it was a lot of extrapolation ahead in my life. And then I wanted to reverse engineer how to get there, because I didn't like where I was headed in the next 20 years on that current path. Mm-hmm. I thought, holy shit, if I want to be like, 50, where I'm at 49 today, I better do some stuff now to be able to live the life I want at that time. So It's two questions. Why residential real estate specifically? What was it? What were the characteristics of that type of investment that you liked? And then, why this decision?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So residential real estate versus any other asset class, it does produce the highest returns. I wouldn't say that's my personal opinion. I would state that's actually facts. So I think the beauty of actually forcing the equity of the home, I think a lot of people don't really understand that concept. Mm-hmm. So obviously you have to dive deep. You have to get into contractors and renovations, but what you purchase a property for versus what it's really worth for today in terms of a turnkey versus something that's a little bit beat up, that's where wealth is actually created. So why as an individual or as an investor, why would I pay for something that's turnkey? Because I'm putting wealth in someone else's pocket, because that value reflects the value of the property. But if I'm paying a price that's lower because it's more beat up, it's a grandma special, for example, I know for a fact I can renovate it for a lower cost than turnkey. And that's where that spread comes into play. So that spread is where wealth is created. And then via a refinance, which is tax-free, it's a beautiful thing, right? And combined with the macroeconomic factors we talked about within Southern Ontario, the returns are compounded. So you have mortgage paydown, you have a little bit of cash flow. That's roughly 10 to 13%. That's 10 to 13% that's tax-free if you hold it within a corp. You combine that by adding a second unit. You combine that by forcing the equity. Like I can make $150,000 in 3 months on any property. What job today can you earn $150,000 tax-free, which is actually $300,000 pre-tax within 3 months? Then I can keep on repeating it. And if the property goes up, hopefully 3% on average every single year, you're pushing 20 to 25% returns. No other asset class that's real, that's stable, that you can touch, that you can have write-offs against can replicate real estate. So I think it comes back to those analytical principles on a macroeconomic level, and no other asset class compares to residential real estate or commercial real estate for that matter.
And you are using 3% as your appreciation rate in some of your calculations looking forward?
Yeah. Just being
That
very,
feels
very conservative for sure.
It's tough to pick an appreciation rate because averages are kind of deceiving when you look historically. It's tough to pick a rate that you can really have some confidence in. I feel like 3%, you're kind of like at a, who knows what is in our future, but 3%.
Hopefully a little bit higher.
Yeah.
Actually, what's really interesting, right? So you look at the economic data around what's predicted within the Canadian market, or let's say the Southern Ontario market. Even though the market's dipped, we're still predicting a net appreciation given that this is a pending recession. So that's the data that people actually aren't even looking at. It's still predicted to go up.
It's crazy. And then, so are you still active right now, or do you still think the opportunities that you've been able to accomplish in real estate in the past little while are still available to people today in 2022, right in the middle of all this? Like kind of, I would say right now, everyone's like unknown with the economy. Are we going to have inflation rip, or is everything about to collapse and we're going into a hard recession? We're really at an inflection point, I feel like right now. Do you feel like the opportunity still exists for you?
Yes, 110%. So I would say from an overall investing principle, if we look at all the previous cycles and we understand how money works, where money is made, Tom, is actually happening right now before our eyes. All the people that understand the certain investing principles, they're rolling up their sleeves. They're ready to deploy a lot of capital right now, and they're going to keep on continuing to do so. So case in point, I was talking to Mike DeZormo, my coach, 2 weeks ago. There's perfect BRRRR opportunities right now. And once again, the perfect BRRRR is all your capital back, the renovations back, your 20% back, because the values have dropped roughly $150,000 on average, but there's still those special properties out there that you can make all of your money. But what's going to happen is people are going to let their fears and inflation and interest rates take over their mindset. They're not looking at the analytical part of how investment should actually be made. So if you can get an infinite return on investment in 3 months, why wouldn't you do it? And it comes back to financial education.
So great answer. And then I guess if I was to play devil's advocate, the only thing that comes to mind would be a temporary problem for you. And the temporary problem would be, in my eyes, that there is so much credit contagion that the banks just stop lending. So Jatinder would come back to the bank and say, I'm ready to refinance. I've, outlaid all this money to contractors. And the banks are like, whoa, so yeah, great property over there, but we don't know what's going on in the world. The Japanese yen's hyperinflating away. Something is for the 25th times happening in Argentina. And, the euro's a little shaky right now. We're just not doing any lending right now, Jatinder. How do you feel you can navigate through that? Could you handle that? Are you prepared for that? Because that's really the biggest threat I see. And I would think that's temporary, because to me, the policy response to that type of world is whole bunch of liquidity and money flushing into the system. But let's say we're in that world for 3 months, 6 months, 18 months. What's your thought process when I share that?
So twofold. So number one would be is I can always consider commercial mortgages around those assets, and the lending criteria is based on the asset versus myself. And you could argue the commercial lenders may tighten up as well too. That's fine. You have to pivot. Number two, actually there's 3 items. Number 2 would be around hard money. There is so much money out there. People want to deploy capital. Just meet the right people. Sure, you'll pay a higher interest rate. It's tax deductible. Money's abundant. Go out there and meet people. 3, in the US, I think it's a fundamentally different lending system. Money can be had very easily. So considering certain US markets would be Yeah, a very attractive proposition, given that they'll actually give you money just on the asset itself and not on you as an individual.
So you might continue doing stuff, but in the US if you had to.
Potentially, for sure.
Yeah.
I think there's more opportunity there than here.
Bigger market.
Bigger market. Yeah.
Okay. What about so how do you get to the point when you're doing some of these things in life where you feel like it sounds like, I don't know, I don't want to say you hit a rut before COVID, but you definitely had a moment of reflection there. How do you kick yourself out of a time where you feel like you're in a bit of a rut in your life? What have you done in the past? I feel like you operate so efficiently with stuff. I'm trying to figure you out, and it's difficult. I've mentioned this to you a bunch of times now. I'm like, what keeps Jatinder going? Because he's just firing on all cylinders here. Yeah. What do you do when you think, oh, I'm in a bit of a rut? Do you purposely pause, or do you need something like a COVID to like kind of shake you up a little bit?
I think COVID shook me up fundamentally to actually take even more action than I was already previously taking in other aspects of my life. But then I think to directly answer your question, it comes back to where do you want to be and why do you want to be there? And then do you actually have a plan to be there, right? I think that's what the missing component in the majority of us is, unfortunately, is we have these lofty aspirations and goals, which is wonderful. We should always be big dreamers because dreaming gets us a long way, but only gets us so far. How intentional are we around the growth of ourselves, around the goals and the life that we want to live? And I think that's a missing component for most people. So I know exactly where I want to do, how I want to feel, where I want to be economically, spiritually, all my relationships, etc. Because I'm very intentional around it. And the cool part is that if you're very intentional, you can create your reality.
I agree. How are you being intentional? What are some of your routines or habits to make that happen? Mm-hmm. Do you have like morning routines? We've talked about this before, and this shows you that I'm getting old, Jatinder, because I forget what you said on the last time we recorded. But what are some of your routines and habits to make that so clear?
Mm-hmm. So the one we just talked about is goal setting. So call that a life plan, call that a yearly plan broken down into quarters and then months, and then your weekly checklist around how you're going to execute your life. And that's just very tactical, but it's actually very important because that strategy around your life, call it 1, 3, 5 years from now, you're defining who you want to be. So number 1 is goal setting and planning. Number 2, journaling actually changed my life fundamentally as well too. I think a lot of stuff goes on in our brain. So our subconscious thoughts is basically who we really are. But I feel like we don't really take the time to think about ourselves and our own mental health and think about our daily experiences. So for example, case in point, at the end of the day, how do we really think about what conversations did we have? How do we think about, hey, I had a great conversation with Tom. I really appreciated this discussion because that's going to bring gratitude. Or if you had a discussion with your son, for example, oh, I really shouldn't have spoken to him in such a manner. This is what I'm going to do to pivot moving forward tomorrow. Or I had a great meal at a restaurant. Wow, this was wonderful. Or your journaling could be around, this is what I need to do tomorrow in order to succeed. So being very intentional on a daily basis and thinking about what actually occurred, because we're all busy people. Like those 16 hours totally go by, then here we are just going to sleep and waking up and doing the same thing again. But if we're really critical and reflective and actually appreciate and then improve daily around our written thoughts, which I think is a wonderful thing to do, that could change your trajectory of your life as well.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. Are you doing that in the mornings, in the evening, throughout the day? What's the practical implementation of that look like? Once a week? What does that look like to you?
Ideally twice a day for 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes at night.
And there you're looking over your tasks for that day and week in that 5 minutes? Your goal, your longer term goals in that 5 minutes, or no, focused on the day and the week in that time?
Yeah, focused on the day. Then on a weekly basis, I'll focus on what I need to execute for the next week, as well as my loftier plan. But the daily journal can be more around what went well, what didn't go well, personally and professionally. What did I appreciate out of the day so I can always live a more gracious life and a humble life? What was awesome? What didn't I like around a certain scenario or a certain conversation? What are some things I would do differently tomorrow and moving forward?
Dude, where is this coming from with you? Does your family, do your parents do this with you? Like, this isn't normal. I mean this in a good way. And I guess, now reflecting back on I feel like I have like a lot of data now, because I can reflect back on the last 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
And I can tell you definitively now that when I was listening to all those Tony Robbins tapes and when he was saying, hey, like, I don't know, plan your morning or plan your week and create your life or whatever, some of the lingo was like, take care of the day and your life will be planned out for you. What is, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That the biggest changes in my life today of how I'm able to live right now today is all because of the habits that I did 20 years ago. And the fruits of that labor is all around me right now. Like the office we're sitting in right now is something that, I think happened 20 years ago. These little incremental steps that I took back then are the reason that we're sitting in this office, which we're pretty proud of. And so I really believe that when I read the words like your daily habits can change your life, I kind of believed it, and I wanted to believe it, and I did do it, but I was still a little bit like, is this really happening? But now I can see the compounded efforts. And if I can boil it down to any one habit, it would be every morning doing what you're saying, a little bit of journaling, reviewing my daily tasks and what I needed to accomplish that week, and doing that every single day for years without fail almost propelled me to the future that I wanted. Like it forced it to happen. And it didn't take much, because whenever I don't do that, I'm just in this reactive mode where text messages show up on your phone, the email box is hitting, somebody's, at the front door.
It's life.
It's life.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're intentionally shutting all that stuff down and focusing on the priority items, and I find like a little 5-minute, 10-minute window at the beginning of the day really allows you to zone in on that, it can change your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm now just kind of ranting all over the place, but where does that recognition come from? Why do you understand the importance of that every day? Does that come from something your parents taught you, a book you read? Where does this understanding come from?
Yeah, I think it's from multiple books and just putting together my own perspective on life. So you can read about others and what they're doing. Then you look at yourself, you're like, oh, geez, right? There's a huge gap. So just by educating myself so around like so many different personal development styles, leadership styles, like philosophy, I can create my own, let's say, the way in which I intentionally want to live. And it just becomes rapidly clear. If I could share something with the viewers, I would say read James Clear, Atomic Habits. It's a really popular book that would solidify all the principles around how small changes lead to magnificent results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have that one on my reading list. I feel like it's a new.
Yeah, last
few years,
2-3 years.
Okay, but that's a good summary of a lot of these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. To that point, it's what you do every day is who you ultimately become as a person. And it's so simple. At the end of the day, or at the start of the day, why are we not spending time on ourselves? So our life is not our work. Our life is around the families that we surround ourselves with, our friends. It's not around work. But then more importantly is we need to take time away from our friends, from our family every single day to work on ourselves. Because if you work on yourself, that's how you produce a better version of yourself to give to your friends and to your family. And also back to your income, the more you invest in yourself is how professionally you grow as well too. So we have to take time away for ourselves. We have to.
I used to do that by waking up before anyone else in my family. And that was like the most cherished time of the day for me. I would get up at like roughly 5 a.m. and it would be a whole hour of reviewing my daily goals and then reading and some journaling. And I looked back, I found one.
So what happened now?
Sorry?
What happened now? You don't do that anymore?
No, I felt in the last, I would say 4 years now, I completely blame I'm not even taking any personal responsibility. I'm just putting it all on my family. They know this because I tell them this all the time, is that I love to get up early. But what happened was I really started enjoying going to some CrossFit stuff and the gym, and my kids were getting older. So when I had to drive, Aiden now he's 20. But when he was like 15, 16, 17, I was still going to some of his soccer stuff. And that would end at like 10 o'clock at night. And we live in Oakville, but maybe the practice was up in Brampton somewhere. By the time we got home and kind of settled in, I wasn't in bed until just after 11 at 11:30 sometimes. And to get up at 5 a.m., and now I'm 45 years old, I found to do some of the activities I wanted during the day, I just wasn't getting enough sleep anymore. And I could do it for a day or two, but if I did it every day, I was a disaster. So I intentionally gave up my early mornings And I always said, I'm doing this because I want to spend time with the family. Because my kids, because Sienna would have been, now she's in her teenage years, my house was very active between 9 and 11 p.m. That's when everybody was home. That's when everybody was sharing everything about the day. If I chose to go to bed at 10 p.m., which my family knows I want to, okay, they know I want to go to bed at 9:30.
Right.
But I would miss those. To me, that's like the best time of the family, right? We have a hot tub, and Carol and Aiden might be popping in the hot tub, and Sienna might want to watch some America's Got Talent or something. Like this is the time to spend with my kids. It's not really at 5 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
So if I chose to go to bed at 9:30 or 10 or 10:30, when they were younger, when they went to bed earlier, that was fine. And I still had time with them, bedtime routine, bath time and dinner and, stories before bed and that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could have some time to myself, and Carol and I can watch a show together, spend some time together, and then go to bed and get up at 5:30 and be happy. But my life changed with the older kids, so I completely blame them. But I don't. I love the whole time. But now I feel like I'm transitioning back because Aiden's 20, Sienna's 16. She's going to be driving. She's starting to drive, but she can't drive by herself yet. And so I can see it starting to change, where I am able to go to bed a little bit earlier again, and I'm going to get my mornings back. So for me, it was a conscious choice of giving up that time in the last few years, but I have noticed a difference in my ability to get some things accomplished as quickly as I would have had them accomplished from the ages of like 28 to 44, 45. It's changed.
Yeah.
But I wanted that time. So it was kind of like a trade-off for me.
Yeah. When you say that, it's really interesting because you know why you did it. And that's what's most important. So you prioritized what you actually wanted to happen.
I still blame them. Just so you know. But
you can do both.
Yeah. But I did prioritize it. It was conscious. Yeah.
Right.
I gave up it, and I knew what I was giving up. But luckily, I feel like we had enough systems built around us in our life at that point, with Rockstar, with our property, just with everything else we had built for like, by that point, it's been 15 years of build, longer. Nick and I have owned properties by ourselves for 20 years. So it had been some time. Mm-hmm. So we were I could make that choice.
Right.
If I was in a moment in my life where I'm like, holy shit, I need to get some stuff done, my choice might have been very different.
Right.
I might have purposely given up some of that time, maybe make it up elsewhere throughout the day or in some other capacity, because I really had to ramp up our financial futures, being at this age saying, holy smokes, in the next 5 or 10 years, I really need to make a change here. So it was kind of purposeful, but I am looking forward. I am getting up now again in the mornings, earlier, once or twice a week. And I think that'll just kind of get back to like 5 times, 6 times a week. I'm hoping, now I'm saying it kind of publicly here, but in the next
You're committing to the world.
18 months. Yeah, I love it. I just love it. There's that time in the morning. Like, I just love it. Getting up early. There's nothing like it in the world to me. Reading.
Agreed.
Yeah, you're reflecting, writing. I look back on some of these journals, and it's freaky what I wrote down in there and the way our life is right now. Like, going on a trip to Europe for every year for a month with the family to a place we own over there, having time freedom.
Right. Yes.
Like, a lot of these things are, I just feel grateful. And looking back at some of these journals, I had no time freedom. I had no financial freedom. I had no 6 weeks minimum vacation a year. This year we're going to go to Croatia. On the way back, we're going to stop at Paris, go around Paris for a little while. We're going to be back for a week. We're going to go to Las Vegas with my nieces who want to come with us. Las Vegas are all getting a little older, so now Las Vegas is a place to go because there's Cirque shows and magic shows and pool and nice dinners and stuff like that. So I get to do that, and that's a real splurge for the family. And I threatened them all. I said, you know how nice this is, right? Like, you better just
better be grateful.
Yeah, you better be grateful for everything that's going on here.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm off track, Jatinder, but I believe in everything that you're doing so strongly, and I can extrapolate your life forward from here. Not that you need me to do that. I can just do that with people now because I can see what their habits are. And to me, you're an interesting case because I can kind of extrapolate where you're going to be 10 years from now, and it's pretty exciting. So you're going to have a lot of options in front of you on how you want to live, where you want to live, what you want to be doing. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, so like it's not just me. I think everyone has this opportunity if they're very thoughtful around where they want to be. That's almost the beauty of life in it of itself, right? If you may be, let's say, in a certain financial position now, but you can make everything happen, right? Read the right books, make the right connections, invest in yourself, do it every single day. We talked about this last time. Have KPIs for your life. in every single aspect of your life. We have KPIs at work, we have targets, we have goals. Why do we not have this for ourselves? Probably 1% of the population does. But if we want to make massive results, and let's say not just financially, I mean true joy, peace, and compassion, you could have KPIs around it, then you could actually implement the daily habits to get there. That's what's missing.
Yeah, that's what's missing. How are you? What do you have any that you could share with us that are useful to you, or anything that come to mind around KPIs in some of those categories? What come to mind when I say that for you?
So it comes back to my daily routine and then my weekly plan. So basically, I have certain KPIs that I need to hit around those. If I hit them every single week, then I'm good to go.
So you're really scoring yourself on, let's say, something like happiness, or how joyful you are, or time with the family. What are some of those criteria?
Yeah, like how do I feel? What was my mood? Did I spend enough time with my family? How am I doing financially? How many pages did I read this week of a book? Did I actually journal this week? How are my eating habits? How many times did I hit the gym? Did I take my dog for a walk today? Did I get out and see the sun today? So all these daily micro wins.
And if you don't hit the wins, you don't get depressed?
It's actually fuel to do it.
Yeah,
that
that's what
same
I found.
day. Yeah, or if not tomorrow.
Yeah. That's what I found, that it's fuel to do it. Because I found when I was looking at my to-do list, I think we did speak about this one. I prioritized it, the Stephen Covey method, on like, hey, what are the actual items? What are my busy work? And I noticed that if I had a to-do list full of busy work, like renewing my driver's license or updating my insurance policies or things like that, versus like finding the next property, or, negotiating the financing, or making a deal with a contractor, or booking a contractor for that renovation, something that was really driving me to my next important goal, or booking that time with the family, whatever it is. The busy work, making a phone call to somebody, or answering my phone even, I could cross those things off my list, but it was frustrating to see day in and day out certain things sit on that piece of paper. I used index cards, and it just pissed me off. And that was the fuel I needed to start saying, I'm not answering my phone. I'm not responding to text messages. I'm not even looking at my email. If I open my email before, there's some of the apps that will block your inbox now. I used to open my email, and like if I had to send an outgoing email, I would open my email and purposely look away from the inbox to hit the compose button, so that I can write the email I needed to write to get it out without looking at my inbox. Like, that's how serious I was about no distractions in that morning time when I needed to get some work done. So I think fuel is the right word there. You get angry at yourself when you see yourself focusing on incorrect tasks.
Agreed. Yeah. Back to that previous point, I think a lot of us are addicted to distractions, and that becomes who we are, because that gives us almost like a quick high by being distracted. And I would say for those that are working the 9 to 5, for example, highly question where your time is spent, and really look at all of those meetings. Do you actually have to be in those meetings? Are they moving the needle forward for your own career, or are they just busy being busy type of meetings? And really question your time. So something that I do is I have no email on my personal phone. I have no calendar on my personal phone. I'm only checking email typically twice a day. I block off 90 minutes every single morning to dedicate to the most important task of that day related to my career. That way I'm very intentionally focused on it. I'm very particular around who books meetings with me, because it must move the needle forward. Everything must be clearly outlined. Otherwise, it's just a discussion. It could just be an email or an update, right? So everything needs to be guarded ruthlessly, because time is our most precious asset.
When you do that, you will lose touch with some of your friends or some people in your life. You've been okay with that?
That's fine, because I'm intentional around where I want to be, because I have set priorities and I have set goals. So I make time for what matters to me, and what matters to me is it's known. It's not unknown. So that's why I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm. And have you noticed that? Have some people fallen away in your life over the last 10 years?
Not necessarily, but I would argue that more time could always be spent doing busy social activities, which I think is absolutely wonderful. But I personally just don't waste my time like binge watching. I'd rather just read a book every single day, to be honest.
What are some of the principles that you live by? Do you have principles you live by? We spoke about this, and I forget how you answered this particular question.
Yes.
Is there principles that you live by, or what are the principles that you live by?
Yeah, so I have 3 main principles. Number one is excellence. So regardless of what someone is doing in their life, whether they're a realtor, whether they're a CEO, whether they're a janitor at a local school, everything that we should be doing should be done with full intention at the highest possible level that we can do it. I think, unfortunately, what's happening right now is that most people are doing average things in their jobs, and that's why they're not succeeding. So in my opinion, and one of the goals that I have for myself is you must be very strong at what you do and put all of your effort into it to get the best results. So am I diagnosing the problem? Am I thinking of different strategic options? Are those options powered by data? What is the end conclusion? And how do I implement it? After I implement it, how do I pivot and make that even better? So be very excellent at what you do. And I think the way in which you do that is you have to be very curious. By asking better questions, you get better results. So excellence, number one, very, very important to me. Number two is kindness and compassion. So we live in a world today where, there's a lot of hate. There's a lot of
anger,
anger,
screaming,
jealousy, envy. Like people are very short with each other. But remember, we're all on this earth together, and we're all human. So we're actually all connected. So just be kind and smiling and happy, and to be in the presence of everyone else around you. I think it's a beautiful thing, and being compassionate while you're doing so. And then number three is integrity. Do what you actually say that you're going to do. And I think the important point here is that what you actually do has to be in congruence with who you are as a person. Because if what you're actually doing in your life is different than what's in your head, I think a lot of misalignment happens, and that could lead to lots of, let's say, psychological related problems around depression, anxiety, performance issues, and just overall stress in your life. So get congruency between your actions and who you are as a person. And if they're not in congruency, then develop a plan to actually make them happen. Because when you're in unity, then you can operate at a higher level.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I found when I was in my that's ultimately what drove me out of the corporate world, is just hearing you say that, is that I wasn't congruent with my life anymore. Like I remember like vividly just being stuck in traffic on the 403 through Mississauga. And we had owned properties in Hamilton. And I just thought, I'm driving in traffic with everyone else stuck bumper to bumper here. The traffic back then anyway, on the way to Hamilton, was empty in the morning. And I'm like, I'm going the wrong way. Like, I just remember saying this, like, I'm going the wrong way. I should be driving that way to the properties. Instead, I'm driving this way to this job. And it became so out of whack that I wasn't happy. Like, I remember going to Carol and telling her, like, it's not even a choice anymore. I have to quit. Because if I don't, I was getting sick every month, like every month. I said, this isn't, if I don't quit, like I'm going to be miserable and I'm going to be sick and stressed out, and I just can't live like this anymore. So it was almost forced upon me. So I don't know if I was like consciously recognizing it or what was happening, but it was burning inside of me. I couldn't do it. I couldn't even fake it anymore. Like I just was miserable, Yeah. So
it's very important. And then, it's important to have a plan around where you want to be. So you probably did. Or I don't know if you just quit cold turkey to have a plan, but.
No, I think a lot of people think entrepreneurs are risk takers. I feel I'm very risk averse. I think that's why I study interest rates the way I study them. And I study things like properties and, gold and Bitcoin. I'm always trying to where's the angle? Where am I not covering something properly here? And for me, the plan was, I remember vividly, I thought I would not quit until I understood how to get a new customer for the business I was thinking of to get into, which was real estate and working with investors. That I had this idea, but to me, I thought everybody has an idea. Like everybody can have a business idea. I need to understand how I'm going to get a new customer that I can serve with integrity, to your point, and with the principles I believe in. How am I going to get them through the door? Like, how will I get them to call me, text me, email me to do business? And once I could solve that puzzle, I would quit. And as soon as I studied enough marketing to understand, and Nick and I, there was a day that I called Nick and said, I think that, we're onto something here. I'm going to quit. You have to decide, are you with me or are you against me right now?
You said it angrily, right?
Yeah, no, I think I said it like top secret. I think I said it really like hey, like Nick, I'm getting close. I'm going to quit here. Are you joining me with this or are you out? And Nick was like right away, no, I'm in. Like there was no hesitation in his voice, which I think ultimately was key because without him joining, I'm not sure we would have gotten to where we both helped each other out for sure. It was definitely challenging at the beginning, but I was risk averse. And to me, I mitigated that risk by understanding how to get new business. And once I solved that puzzle, I felt I could quit with my wife at home, mortgage on the house, 2 young children, but I felt the risk wasn't as high as people were perceiving it to be. Right. That I knew how I was going to generate new business. And it still was 3 to 5 years of definite hard work. And looking back, I'm not even sure how we survived through that. But that's how I mitigated that risk. I don't even know, Jatinder, how we got onto that topic. But anyway. Yeah, you're giving me flashbacks.
Yeah, it actually made me think of something too. So if you think of, there's a lot of studies done around happiness in the workplace, and I think the leader in that is Gallup. So the majority of people are not happy in whatever jobs that they do. And I think that ultimately comes back to them not having a plan around where they want to be in their respective career. So forget about the life aspect, because I think there's 2 different discussions. There's entrepreneurship, then there's entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is that you can be the own CEO with your respective business unit or whatever that you're doing at a company. So what I see in the corporate setting is that people aren't crafting their life to create net new innovative ideas that move the needle. They don't have intentional plans around goal setting with their bosses or, collaborating with other groups to actually make a better result. And then basically what happens is they just clock in and they clock out. They go home, they bring that emotional baggage to their family, their friends, they watch TV and they call it a day and they do it again. And then that's what people unfortunately call a life. But if you were very intentional around the career you wanted to create with goals and innovative ideas and implementing and seeing it happen, the workplace could be a beautiful thing as well too. So the concept of entrepreneurship is a very cool idea that a lot of people, hopefully they can grasp onto, because careers can be great. They can be fulfilling, but obviously creating something on your own from scratch and calling it your own, that's wonderful too. But you can do that internally as well.
And then that would be powerful. You're right. Because if you had that, you could be in a career, be happy, feel congruent, be in integrity with yourself, and have the best of both worlds, working in a career that's very satisfying and maybe building a plan B of some sort, financially.
Side hustle,
in some way. Yes. And kind of do both. And I feel like that's what you're able to do with your career. I feel like we haven't talked about it much, but you're clearly very intentional with your life. So you're intentional in that regard as well. Mm-hmm. So kudos to you. I mean, I think that's incredible to think of it that way. I'm just trying to think, like, why do most people clock in and clock out? And I think just those discussions sometimes in a corporate setting, you don't know how they're going to be received. And sometimes I think they're received better than people imagine. Because I'm sure if I went to the VP I was reporting to and said, hey, here's where I'm frustrated and here's what I would need to make this work for me, I think they would be, at that time he would have been very receptive and, would have changed things. So,
I think of 2 different points around that. So you could be the own entrepreneur if the CEOs or the business level leadership, if they actually create the environment to do so. Because culture breeds the next generation of leadership. So for example, if you and Nick had certain principles and the staff felt a certain way, that's going to lead to a certain level of results, call it good or bad, but that's your opportunity. That's any VP's opportunity. Then also, I think, unfortunately, in the corporate world, we wear masks. But like I said before, we're all humans. So why can we not just have honest, transparent discussions instead of keeping it political, do the right thing for the customer? Let's just be human and create beautiful, magical results. But I find, unfortunately, people wear masks at work, and that's not who they really are. And then they're not in congruency, and then they have pain.
I want to ask you one more thing about real estate and something else just about life in general. On the real estate front, are you going to go down the joint venture path for you to continue expanding your portfolio? Because ultimately everybody runs out of capital. I think this is the biggest thing that people were shocked for Nick and I when we started this business. We got a lot of, why are you guys not buying this property? And we had a lot of answers that went around, the theme of it was, we have no more money to buy any more of these properties. And now that we've quit our jobs, the banks hate us even more than they hated us before. So we can't buy these properties. And then, so ultimately for Nick and I guess it was joint ventures between each other. And then over time we did do some joint ventures. Now we really kind of don't do that anymore. But we did go down that joint venture path. Is that something you're going to be open to? What would the criteria look like? Who's the right fit for you?
For sure, yeah, that's something that I do wish to pursue right now, and actually I am pursuing it. So for those that don't know, a joint ventureship basically has two parties. You have an active partner, that's the real estate expert. So I have the right team, the right strategies. I've failed and I've made lots of mistakes, and I would take all of that on. Then there's the capital partner. So those two parties ultimately come together to invest into an asset class, so such as real estate. So I am open and seeking active partners that have a similar mindset around life as well.
I can imagine if doing a joint venture with you, you're going to have a pretty tight screening process. I don't know what that looks like for Jatinder, but I have a feeling it's going to be, if you're going to do a joint venture with Jatinder, he's going to ask you some specific questions. Have you done joint ventures yet, or is this something you're about to start doing?
I've done them. Yeah.
You've done them, and you do go through I guess some kind of screening process to make sure you're a good fit for each other?
It's just a conversation. So if the discussion is around returns and, what ifs and risks and fear, or if there's like a greed element to the conversation, then I'm not interested. So this is a transformational relationship in which a lot of wealth can be created over the years. I want someone that's aligned with that versus just thinking it's a one-off transaction and it's just a home and that's it. This is more. So I want to support whoever that I'm working with, not just from an investment standpoint, but around their mindset around real estate and life. So it's a partnership.
Mm-hmm. Before I forget, if someone wants to reach out to you, remember this is a public podcast. Is there a URL to share that you want to share on that?
For sure, yeah. So it's www.JatinderGill.ca. So that's JatinderGill.ca.
Okay, and we'll put JatinderGill.ca in the show notes of this particular episode as well, so it'll be there for you if you're listening to this. With your real estate, will there be I guess you just have a certain amount of goals around real estate. I'm just wondering if you're going to hit a certain cap. Is there a certain number you're looking for? You're just in your growth period now, and when you hit your certain goal, then you'll pause and just kind of keep the portfolio as is.
No, I think with anything in life, with goals, they're iterative. So I'm going to change, grow, and develop as a person. The portfolio is going to evolve. I'm going to feel differently around certain situations, but I'll always have a goal in mind. So I will keep on changing and evolving those goals.
When you're
there's no end game. Life is always
sure, and that's how I feel as well. Sometimes we'll be asked, what's the next thing for Rockstar? Like it's some other thing, and we're just like still evolving with this business because we feel there's so much more to do. There's so much more. So yeah, I like the iterative approach. With life, you mentioned early on that continuing education might be even more important than some of your formal education. When did you come to that conclusion?
I think during school, I realized that I'm not really too interested in the schooling system. I think there's a lot of positive merits in it, but similar to your concept around the corporate life, like what am I doing? I'm driving in the wrong way. I had that sitting in the classroom and the lecture halls, like what is the meaning of this? Am I actually going to be getting a job out of this? Someone that's teaching me this course doesn't actually make that much money around like what's actually possible and what's out there, right? So they couldn't make it in, let's call the real world. And there's nothing against professors or anything like that, but they haven't actually made it. So what is the purpose of what I'm doing? Why is this so much theory, and where's the actual action related to a typical 9 to 5? And then also I paid all of my own tuition as well. So it's like, this is expensive for what I'm getting, and I'm spending years doing it. So granted, I did learn a lot, but there's a lot of what ifs around the educational system that I have.
Where were you born? Where did you grow up? Who are your parents? Where were they born?
So my parents were born in India. They came to Canada in the 70s. Was born in Cambridge, but then grew up between Ancaster and Brantford. So we had a 10-person or a 10-room motel. There was a combined office in the middle.
I've forgotten this.
And then there was 6 of us in a two-bedroom tiny home. But you saw the income come in. It wasn't big, but that's probably where real estate maybe started when I was 5 or 6 years old. So when I was 10 years old, I would help serve customers, like give them rooms. I would do the maintenance. I would cut the grass. I did a little bit of accounting with my mom. And like we had nothing. Like we were 6 of us in this home, but it was just enough to get by. Yeah.
Are the siblings, brothers and brothers, sisters, combo?
I have 2 older sisters and an older brother.
Okay. You're the youngest.
I'm the baby, apparently.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And are they all around town as well?
They are. They're all in the
Everyone's
GTA.
here.
Yeah.
Is everybody like you so well thought out and articulate with what they're doing?
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have to try. We'll track down the whole Gill family here and figure out what's the secret. And then your parents. So you saw hard work. You paid for your own schooling. Okay. And that makes sense to me. You paid for your own schooling. That's when you really recognize, like, geez, is this really worth it? What I'm getting is the return I'm really getting here. It's funny. My son was just here. We were just talking about a book. I gave him a book on sales that was really impactful to me. And he read it. And you could see him going through the process. Like, he's taking a business degree right now, but this is some basic, I wouldn't say basic sales information. I'll take that back. This is some advanced sales information that you would think would be taught in a business program because it's very practical. It's the, actual process of engaging with somebody and finding out their motivations and their needs and how you serve them best out of a place of principle and making upfront mutually agreeable contracts with people. Just kind of, standard kind of stuff, but it's not covered in the universities at all. You kind of have to discover this stuff yourself on some books that you pick up from Amazon or the bookstore,
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's just mind blowing. I remember when I first started figuring out marketing, I'm like, why don't they teach us in the marketing programs? Like, you don't learn this kind of stuff. You just learn about branding, and it's not really
right. Yeah.
applicable for small business.
So I have my MBA from the Ivy School of Business, which apparently is the top business school in Canada. And you're not learning a whole lot. You learn a lot from, let's say, great peers, great network.
The network would be important.
Amazing, like consulting case method that gets you to think differently. But the principles, they're not transformative and practical into real life. Like, it's what you do outside of the educational system daily by failing and then by continuously learning. That's how you evolve. Mm-hmm. And then, spending $100,000 isn't fun either. So,
especially, agreed. Okay, Jatinder, what do you figure? What is the meaning of life? What do you think the meaning of life is? What in from your vantage point? What is the meaning of life?
Oh,
what are we here for? What is this all about? All this stuff that is going on. I'm just throwing that out a little bit as a joke, but I'm curious to see how you answer that.
I would say 2 things. I would say number 1 is to give to others around you, whether that's your presence or whether that's financially, is to give just to see other people evolve. Because I personally find that to be very fulfilling. Because we're all on this path. And if life has, let's say, 1,000 steps, there's people behind us, there's people ahead of us. How do we all bring each other up so we could all be elevated? So I think just giving in that concept of generosity and compassion and kindness is critical. But then it's also to grow. So to give and to grow. And I mean grow in every single aspect of your life. So if you only have one life to live, why would we not be trying to evolve in every single area every single day? Otherwise, that's a recipe for mediocrity. And growth actually gives fulfillment. It's scientifically proven. And I don't mean growth financially. That's only one concept. There's many other aspects in which you can grow, but that's what gives you fulfillment. By seeing those results, seeing that progression, that's fuel. And that's what I use. So to give and to grow. That's life, Tom. I don't know.
Wow. No, that's a beautiful answer, Jatinder. I would have not been able to answer something like that. That's a beautiful answer. Thank you for sharing that. You're making me realize that the give is very satisfying, and you can give in so many different ways. There is something just satisfying about that, and it is completely fulfilling. And then to grow, I think I really finally appreciated growing when it wasn't just financially, when I could grow with my relationships, when I could grow with my understanding of things like nutrition and my health and my fitness. And I could grow in all these areas. Part of the reason I like challenging myself at this CrossFit gym, Radix, that we go to, is I like seeing if I'm going to quit. Like, am I going to quit? Because I don't like anything, by the way. Like, anytime they do programming, I'm the number one complainer. I'm known as the number one complainer there, okay? Any gym, any programming that goes up for the day, I'm always telling everyone it's garbage and it's horrible and this sucks.
Why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this? And why am I'm paying you to come here? But then I like doing it because I'm curious. Like, will I give up? Will I stop? How well will I perform? Can I perform better than last week? And if I didn't, why? And even if I didn't, learning why I didn't might be the most valuable lesson of that day.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so it's in all areas, but I do feel that until you straighten out your finances, you don't have the peace of mind or the time to really appreciate these other areas, because we all need to pay the rent and buy food and take care of our family. So I do feel there is maybe early in life some need to focus on getting that area of life sorted so that you can focus in these other very meaningful, more impactful areas of life. But because, to your point, if you're
Right.
always reactive and you don't solve the finance area, it's hard to really appreciate nutrition or fitness or really get it to an optimal level of living, because you do have this worry about paying the bills next month.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of tough
Totally.
to tell people to live a balanced life if they haven't solved this one area. And initially, I do feel that area does need a little bit of attention just to kind of spring that into momentum. So if you can build some cash flow and some multiple streams of income and some asset base and develop a career that is very satisfying, it is important. And I'm only hesitating because the other areas of life I could argue are more important, but they kind of hinge on getting this one right. Does that make sense?
It does. So let's talk about money buying happiness. And I guess that could be a sensitive or taboo topic. Money does buy happiness, in my opinion, strongly. It's scientifically proven at around like $75,000. They did a study in the US out of Harvard that $75,000, no one is generally happier. But there's lots of others.
I took some Harvard courses, dropping the Harvard name. I get it. I see what you're up to.
No, I read that in an article.
I'm joking. Yeah, I'm
from
joking.
the Harvard
I'm joking.
Business Review. So then there was this topic around money buying happiness. And then it was all around the use cases, such as the experiences, because experiences is life. And if you have more wealth, you can change the experiences for you and your family. And that's where happiness actually is. Money can remove problems, and it can actually buy you time via delegation. So yes.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Because when I reflect on some of the best memories over the last 10, 20 years of my life, a lot of them are time with family in different experiences.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is just
part.
at home. It could be just,
Yes.
it doesn't have to be anything extravagant, but as your financial situation changes, you can have some pretty fun experiences that you never thought you could have before. And they're very meaningful to me anyway. They're very meaningful, that time together.
Like in Croatia, drinking wine,
Yeah,
overlooking the ocean.
Yeah, I gotta stop telling people how much I enjoy drinking wine. Listen,
You
when
make
I
me wanna
drink
go
wine,
there.
I do. Yeah, I do drink wine when I'm there, but it's not like I'm drinking wine all day. It's just during these meals.
Only for breakfast, right?
Yeah. It's these long kind of, I don't even know if they're dinner or lunches. They're kind of middle of the day. And yeah, Jatinder, it would be great to host you over there. And this summer, a bunch of Rockstar members that have been members for a long time happened to be doing a trip in Croatia, and we're going to be meeting up. And I'm
nice.
really, there is a chance we're going to bring them to our favorite patio over there. So I hope that works out. And yeah, totally looking forward to it. If we could ever do that with you and your family one day, those are the dreams that are coming true for me. So yeah, I appreciate this, Jatinder. Anything else you wanted to share before we wrap up?
Sure, yeah. So if I could add some value to the audience, I want to talk about 4 Ks. So number 1 is keep on learning. So that continuous learning process, especially if we're in a pending possible recession, now is the time to double down and invest in yourself and learn personally and professionally. This will magnify your income. It's going to magnify your wealth. And back to the educational system, why is it that we stop in grade 12 or college or university? Why do we stop there? Why do we not have dedicated time in our calendars, preferably in the morning, to learn? That's how we're going to make more money. That's how we're going to make better decisions. That's how we're going to figure out how to be more healthy, because we're reading about nutrition. And that aspect around learning, the way in which that the marketplace rewards you monetarily is by the value that you add to the end customer base. So if you can learn more professionally to add more value to other people, that's how you increase your income and create your wealth. So think of the Rockstar platform. Look at what you guys do. You guys are game changers. Sure, you guys help facilitate real estate transactions, but it's around the education, right? So the events, the podcasts, the newsletters, that's totally educational in its value. But guess what? My point was around learning. You and Nick are continuously learning, and you're sharing that back to your community. And that's how you're monetarily rewarded. So you're continuously learning around assets, different asset classes, what's happening within the economy or the crazy Fed, right? But you're learning, but you're adding value to us. And that's why you're rewarded. So we need to always be learning. So number 2 is just kill out the fears that you have in your life, and obviously easier said than done. So think of conversations that you have with maybe colleagues, family members, or whomever, right? There's lots of excuses that come up in these discussions around, I don't have the time for this today, or I'm just getting out of a bad relationship. I can't really do this right now. Or, I have two young boys. I just don't have time. Like, I just can't really figure this out. Like, I can't wake up early and go for that walk. I can't go to sleep later because I'm going to feel too groggy tomorrow. So our fears are destroying our future. So it's really important to get hyper aware around what our excuses are. And a cool way to look at this is that our excuses are the lies that our fears are telling us. So we need to be super aware of what we're thinking and why we're not doing certain things. And when we're complaining and when we're not taking action, like buying real estate, figure out what those fears are. It's so critical. The third K is going to be keep moving forward. So this is around the habit of like consistency. So it's not what you do. That's one event in your life. The way people get there is what they do behind the scenes every single day. That's how Michael Jordan became Michael Jordan. It's the small, seemingly insignificant micro habits and practices and rituals and being so dedicated to what you do every single day. That's what leads to results. And then the last K is, if you think about it, keep on going when you don't want to go. So that reminds you of the exercise analogy, right? So the way in which to separate yourself from the crowd is when you least want to do something, when you're finding yourself reaching for the ruffles, when you don't want to do that extra push-up, when you don't want to educate yourself around real estate, when you don't want to learn how the Fed treats the citizens, for example, or how money works. That's what's stopping you. So when you catch yourself in the moment, that's what separates people. When you don't want to do it, that's when you actually have to do it. Then when you do it, when you don't want to do it, that leads to willpower, it leads to discipline, and it leads to results. So the 4 Ks.
Wow. Jatinder, you're a unique person, man. I really feel grateful to have crossed paths. Really grateful. So I don't know how you stumbled upon us and how I'm so fortunate to be able to sit across the table from you here today, but I really feel grateful. I mean, thank you for everything that you shared. And hopefully we can add just a bit more value to you. I don't know, with everything I feel that you have figured out in life, I'm not sure how much value we can offer Jatinder Gill anymore. But
I'm just learning every day too, Tom, right?
Yeah. Very fortunate. This is, to me, what makes my life very satisfying is having these types of conversations. So thank you. And the URL again, if you want to reach out to Jatinder, is JatinderGill.ca. It'll be linked in the show notes. Jatinder, thank you so much. And thank you for coming back to do this a second time. Thank you. Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Term show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.